The first tribe that I worked with in New Guinea was the Foray people in the highlands. Now, the highlands of New Guinea, people have been in the highlands for 46,000 years. The highlands were isolated from the coast. Highlanders didn't visit the coast.
Did you say 46,000? 46,000 years.
46,000 years is
Wow.
when people first came to New Guinea.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
Highlanders have been there for a long time. They've been isolated for a long time. One might think then that there's been lots of time for them to end up very different from us, and in particular because there has been writing in the West for 5,000, about 200 years, and there's been writing in Europe for 4,000 years. You might guess that there would be genetic requirements to be able to write, and that New Guineans wouldn't have those requirements. Well, while I was on a trip to New Guinea about 10 years ago, I happened to be working in an oil camp, and I had a room in the oil camp where I was doing my bird studies. In the next room, there was a New Guinean working away at a computer. So just out of curiosity, I introduced myself. It turned out that he was from the Foray tribe, the tribe that I had first encountered in 1964.
The Highlanders.
A Highlander.
Yes.
And it turned out that he was the son of the first South Foray man who had learned to write. So you might imagine that after 46,000 years of isolation, it would take hundreds of years of evolution for New Guineans to acquire the genes that would let them write. But no, in come Europeans, they start to teach people to write, and immediately the father of this guy learns how to write. But on top of that, this guy, this Foray man, was sitting at his computer. He had learned how to operate a computer. I don't know how to turn a computer on. And there he was. He trained as an engineer. He was developing the water circulation plans for a small city in the highlands. So there, in one generation, he has gone from non-literacy to computer literacy far beyond me, and he's an engineer devising waterworks systems. That just illustrates that the brain is there, and what's missing is an opportunity. You bring in the opportunity, and within a few weeks, someone starts to write.
So this is one of the greatest stories I've ever heard. Let me just put it out there. I wish the world could hear that story. I'm going to tweet that story. I'm going to do whatever I can. What does that say about evolution? What does that say about the origin of the species? What does that say about the descent of man? What does that say about Darwin? That feels to me... It feels to me like there's something else going on. It feels to me that if we did descend from apes, I'm willing to believe it. I believe in science. Science is awesome. There's got to be a lot of room for science. Is there something else going on there that we haven't touched on? Since it seems to me that the 46,000 years ago, Papua-New Guineans, even though they were isolated, were born essentially with the same brains as Europeans. The Europeans came along, and they did everything from the Acropolis to Aeschylus to Shakespeare to Beethoven to Mozart, and the list goes on, and nuclear fusion, for God's sake. And all of a sudden, in one generation, we've got somebody who is performing up to par.
But that's because of how you understand intelligence. You understand intelligence as in there must be a specific modality for writing and one for math and all of that sort of stuff. But what we now know over the last 50 years is that the amazing thing about the human brain is its raw flexibility, and that it's equipped with certain very basic tools that enable almost anything to be possible. I mean, I think one of the things that I remember, I don't know whether it was in your book, but about reading about these Papua New Guinean Highlanders, and they developed this system of irrigation for their crops. And of course, the well-meaning Westerners come in and say, oh, there's a much, much better way to do it. And of course, the system is a disaster. It wipes out the entire mountainside. And it turns out that while their system may have been less efficient, there was a reason why it was structured that way, because it was sustainable. Was that in one of your books, Professor?
Yes, it was. It's a wonderful story. So in the New Guinea Highlanders, they grow sweet potatoes. The environment is rather hilly, and they have irrigation ditches, and the irrigation ditches go around the hills along the contour line. So in comes an agricultural expert, and he looks at these irrigation ditches going around the contour line, and he's absolutely horrified. He says, for heaven's sakes, you stupid primitive people. That wretched irrigation dish, it ought to run downhill to drain the water quickly off the the top of the hill. And so put in your irrigation ditches vertically going downhill. So the people were awed by the agricultural expert, and they put in their irrigation ditches vertically going downhill. And as soon as the rains began next year, within a short time, not only the water, but most of the topsoil on top of the hill was down at the bottom of the hill, because this is an area with rainfall up to 700 inches per year, and you do not want an irrigation ditch that runs straight downhill, otherwise it's going to become a river and carry away your topsoil. Well, in 46,000 years, New Guineans have had the opportunity to figure that out.
Yeah, they had 46,000 years. You might want to listen to cultures that's been around there for that long.